The air in the dining room was thick with the smell of roasted turkey and garlic butter bread when Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes sharp as glass, and said the words that cut me deeper than any knife ever could. Look at you, sitting here in that outdated dress, eating food you could never afford if not for us. You are nothing but a pauper, Diane. My husband may be your son, but this family dinner is far above your league. The clatter of silverware froze. Craig shifted in his chair, embarrassed, while my youngest granddaughter tried to understand why her grandmother's face suddenly went pale. My cheeks burned, but not from shame. No, it was something stronger, something darker rising inside me. I smiled. Yes, I smiled when my daughter-in-law spat those words across the table. And in that moment, every person seated there had no idea what was coming next. Because Vanessa thought she knew me. She thought I was powerless, but she was wrong. She had no idea that behind my quiet eyes lived a truth that could shatter her arrogance into 1,000 pieces. But before I tell you exactly what happened that night and what I did to Vanessa after she called me a pauper, let me take a moment to appreciate you, my audience. Thank you for subscribing to this channel, for giving me your time, your ears, and your hearts. And to my new viewers, welcome. I am so glad you are here. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button because it is the fuel that powers this channel and the stories I bring to you. Do not forget to leave your thoughts in the comments because your voice matters and I want to hear it. Now, let us return to that dinner table where everything changed. My name is Diane. I am 57 years old and I live in a quiet part of Pennsylvania. For most of my life, I have worked hard, raised my only son, Craig, alone, and carried myself with dignity, even when life weighed me down. Craig, my pride and joy, grew into a fine young man. He graduated, built a career, and fell in love with Vanessa, a woman who dazzled him with her beauty and charm. To him, she was perfect. To me, she was complicated. Vanessa valued appearances above all else. Expensive clothes, shiny cars, fancy dinners. To her, a person's worth was measured by the labels they wore and the dollars in their bank account. And because I lived a modest life, she often looked down on me as though I were a stain on her perfect picture. Still, I endured her snide remarks and cutting glances for the sake of my son. I told myself it was not worth the fight, but that evening, at the family dinner, she crossed a line that could never be erased. As everyone stared in stunned silence, I sat there, calm, steady, my hands folded on the tablecloth. I did not shout, I did not cry, and I did not let her see the storm that roared inside me. Instead, I smiled, and that smile unsettled her more than anger ever could. Because Vanessa did not know that her words had just opened a door she would soon wish had remained closed. And what I did next would change the way she looked at me forever.
I want you to imagine the silence after Vanessa's insult. It was not the kind of silence that brings peace. It was the kind that crackles, heavy with unspoken words, the kind where you can hear the nervous breath of every person at the table. I stared at Vanessa, and she avoided my eyes, suddenly unsure of herself. My son Craig shifted uncomfortably, his hand brushing over his wine glass, but he said nothing. That silence, his silence, cut me deeper than Vanessa's words. I had raised him with nothing but my 2 hands, working nights at the hospital cafeteria and days cleaning houses just to give him a better life. Yet here he was, frozen, unwilling to defend me against a woman who knew nothing of the sacrifices that built his world. It was not Vanessa's insult that broke me. It was Craig's hesitation. I swallowed that pain and I remembered something my mother once told me. The strength of a woman is not in how loud she screams, but in how calm she stands. So I stood tall, even while sitting at that dinner table. But as I sat there, I knew the time had come to finally peel back the curtain, to let Vanessa and even Craig see the truth they had ignored for too long. Vanessa had always been obsessed with money. From the moment Craig introduced me to her, I could see it in her eyes. She dressed like a queen, spoke like royalty, and looked at people as if they were price tags. She would come into my house, my modest little brick home in Pennsylvania, and wrinkle her nose. "Oh, Diane, your furniture is so vintage," she would say, pretending it was a compliment. Or she would glance at my shoes and mutter, "They look comfortable, but not exactly stylish." I ignored her. I thought time and motherhood would soften her, that the weight of real life would teach her that respect matters more than a pair of shoes. But she never changed. In fact, she got worse. Craig's success in his career only added fuel to her pride. They lived in a large home, drove luxury cars, and traveled every summer. And while I was happy that my son could give his family things I never had, Vanessa never stopped reminding me that I was the poor mother-in-law. The irony? She had no idea that my modesty was a choice. Because the truth was, I was not the pauper she thought I was. Let me take you back years before that dinner. When my parents passed away, they left me more than just memories. My father, a quiet man who worked in real estate, left behind land in the outskirts of Pittsburgh. At that time, the land was worth very little. Nobody believed in it. People mocked him for buying it. But my father always told me, "Hold on to it, Diane. One day it will matter." And it did. That land, over the years, turned into something far more valuable than I ever imagined. Developers began buying properties, companies began building, and the value soared. But I never touched it. I never flaunted it. Why? Because money never defined me. I wanted to raise my son with values, not vanity. I wanted him to understand hard work, humility, and dignity. But instead of respecting that, Vanessa twisted it into weakness. She saw me as small because I did not show my wealth. She mistook silence for poverty. That was her biggest mistake. At that dinner table, as everyone sat frozen, I slowly lifted my water glass and took a sip. My eyes never left hers. "You call me a pauper, Vanessa," I said softly, my voice calm, but sharp enough to slice the air. "But do you know the story of the hands that raised your husband? Do you know the value of the sacrifices that built the life you now enjoy?" She shifted in her chair, rolling her eyes, but I noticed her fingers tighten around her fork. She was nervous. Craig opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. Inside, I felt years of unspoken words rising in my chest. The nights I had gone hungry so Craig could eat. The winters I had worn the same coat just to save money for his textbooks. The summers I had worked double shifts so he could play football with brand new cleats. Vanessa thought she was mocking a poor woman. What she was really mocking was the spine of the family she had married into. And for the first time, I realized I could not remain silent anymore. After dinner, when everyone was leaving the table, I asked Craig and Vanessa to sit with me in the living room. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded against my chest. "Craig," I said, "there are things about me you do not know. About our family, about your future." Vanessa smirked, her arms crossed, as if she was prepared to hear another sob story. But she was not ready for what came out of my mouth. I looked them both in the eyes and said, "I am not who you think I am, and the truth about me will change everything."
The room felt heavy when I said those words. Craig leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion, while Vanessa gave a short laugh that dripped with arrogance. "Oh, Diane," she scoffed, waving her manicured hand. "Are you about to tell us how rich you are in spirit? Because unless you can pay bills with wisdom and good morals, that means nothing." Her words stung, but they also fueled me. I had stayed silent for far too long. My son deserved to know the truth, and Vanessa deserved to finally see the limits of her cruelty. I steadied myself, drew a deep breath, and said, "Craig, the life you know, the education, the opportunities, the freedom you had growing up, it was not luck. It was sacrifice. And it was also something else." Craig blinked, his eyes searching mine. "Mom, what do you mean?" I leaned back, my hands clasped together. "Years ago, when my parents passed, they left me land outside Pittsburgh. At first, it was worth nothing, but I held on to it because my father told me never to let it go. Craig, that land is now worth millions, and every year its value grows higher." The silence that followed was sharp enough to pierce the air. Craig's mouth opened, then closed again. Vanessa's smirk froze on her face. I could almost hear her heartbeat echoing in the room. "Yes," I continued softly. "For years, I could have lived in luxury. I could have worn the finest clothes, traveled the world, and eaten at the most expensive restaurants. But I chose not to. I wanted you, Craig, to grow up knowing the value of hard work, not the emptiness of entitlement. I wanted you to be a man of character, not vanity." Vanessa's face twisted with disbelief. She shook her head furiously. "No, that is impossible. You live in that tiny old house, you wear cheap clothes, you drive a car that should have been thrown out years ago. You are lying, Diane." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Sometimes the wealthiest people are the quietest ones in the room." Craig sat there, stunned. I could see a war inside him, pride, confusion, guilt. He looked at me, then at Vanessa, then back at me. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Mom, why did you never tell me?" Tears threatened my eyes, but I swallowed them down. "Because I wanted you, Craig, to build your own life. I wanted you to know success that came from your own two hands, not mine. Money can buy a lot of things, but it cannot buy strength, resilience, or respect. I gave you those gifts, not checks, not handouts, gifts." Craig lowered his gaze, shame washing over him. He had allowed Vanessa to disrespect me countless times, and now the truth was burning him from the inside out. But Vanessa? She was not ashamed. She was angry. "You mean to tell me," she hissed, "that you sat on millions while we built our lives, while we worked, while Craig struggled to get started in his career? You could have helped us, Diane. You could have given us more. Instead, you let us think you were poor. You let me think I was above you. I raised my hand, cutting her off. My voice came out firm, steadier than I felt. "I owe you nothing, Vanessa. I gave my son everything I had: love, education, opportunity. What I chose to do with the rest was my decision. And do not mistake humility for weakness. That has been your greatest mistake." Her lips trembled with fury. She looked at Craig as though begging him to take her side, but his face told a different story. For the first time, Craig's eyes no longer carried blind devotion for his wife. They carried disappointment. But just when I thought the truth had silenced her,
Another voice entered the picture. From the corner of the living room, where she had quietly observed everything, Gloria, my sister, spoke. "Yes, Diane, it is true you are wealthy, but tell them all why you hid it. Tell them the whole truth." My chest tightened. Of all people, Gloria was the last person I wanted to speak. Craig turned sharply to her. "Aunt Gloria? What do you mean?" Gloria's lips curved into a cold smile. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting with something I could not yet name. "Your mother is not as selfless as she wants you to believe. She did not just hide her wealth to teach you lessons. She hid it because she could not stand the thought of sharing it, even with her own family." My blood froze. Gloria's words were venom, designed to poison every ear in the room. Vanessa's eyes lit up with renewed fire. She clutched onto Gloria's accusation like it was gold. "So that is it. That is the real Diane. Selfish, secretive, greedy." Craig looked at me, torn and confused, his world spinning. And in that moment, I realized something that shattered me more than Vanessa's insult ever could. Gloria had been feeding Vanessa's disdain for me all along. My own sister had been whispering in her ear, planting seeds of contempt. The betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. I sat there, the weight of their stares pressing against me, knowing that the next words out of my mouth could either heal or destroy everything I had built. Because Gloria's truth was not the whole truth. And soon I would have to expose not just Vanessa, but my very own sister. The living room pulsed with tension after Gloria's accusation. My own sister, the woman who had shared my childhood, my secrets, and my tears, was now siding with Vanessa? She had betrayed me in front of my son, in front of my grandchildren, in front of the very family I had fought to protect. I sat there quietly, letting the venom of her words settle into the room, watching as Craig's eyes darted between us. Vanessa smirked like a cat that had finally cornered its prey. She thought she had won. But victory is not always found in the loudest voice. Sometimes it is in the calm before the storm. I stood up slowly, my knees aching but my back straight, my heart hammering like a drum. Everyone's eyes followed me as I walked across the room to a cabinet tucked in the corner. From it, I pulled out a simple brown envelope. I returned to the center of the room, laid the envelope on the table, and slid it across toward Craig. "Open it," I said. His hands trembled as he pulled out the documents. His eyes widened as he read. "Mom, this is proof of ownership for..." His voice cracked. "This is land. Acres and acres of land in Pittsburgh." Vanessa's jaw dropped. She snatched the papers from his hands, scanning them frantically as if trying to find a loophole that would prove me wrong. But she could not. "That," I said firmly, "is just a fraction of what I own. That land alone is worth tens of millions, and every year it grows in value. I have more assets, Craig, stocks, accounts. But I never flaunted them because I wanted you to understand that life is not about what you have, but who you are." Vanessa staggered back as though she had been slapped. "Tens of millions?" she whispered, her voice hollow. Craig looked up at me, his face pale with shock. "Mom, why did you never say anything?" I turned my gaze to Gloria. My sister's eyes burned with envy. She already knew the answer. "Because," I said slowly, "wealth does not define respect. I thought if I stayed silent, if I lived humbly, I would teach everyone around me the true meaning of value. But it seems my silence was taken as weakness. And you, Gloria," I pointed at her, my voice cracking with pain, "you knew the truth. You twisted it. You poisoned Vanessa against me. For what? For jealousy? For money that was never yours to begin with?" Gloria sneered, but her eyes darted away. She had no defense. Then I turned to Vanessa.
You called me a pauper tonight. You spat on me in front of my grandchildren. You laughed at my clothes, my car, my house. But you never once stopped to ask what kind of woman I am. You judged me by what I chose not to show. And that, Vanessa, is the greatest poverty of all. Vanessa's lips trembled. Her face, usually painted with arrogance, now looked small, exposed, and pitiful. Craig rubbed his forehead, shaking his head. I cannot believe this. All this time, I let her disrespect you, Mom. I stayed quiet when I should have stood up. And Aunt Gloria, I trusted you. You both betrayed me. For a long moment, silence filled the room again. But this time, it was different. It was the silence of reckoning. I walked back to my seat, lowered myself slowly, and folded my hands in my lap. My voice softened. Craig, remember this. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy dignity. Respect is not given to the one who wears the most expensive suit, but to the one who carries themselves with honor. Vanessa will need to decide if she wants to be part of this family with respect, or she will continue chasing empty wealth. And Gloria, her place in my life is already gone. My words hung in the air like heavy smoke. Vanessa lowered her head, shame finally breaking through her pride. Craig reached for my hand, his eyes brimming with tears. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. I squeezed his hand gently. You are my son. My forgiveness is yours. But never again will I sit silent while someone treats me as less than what I am. Weeks later, the entire family still whispered about that dinner. Vanessa walked with her head bowed whenever she was near me. Gloria kept her distance, angry that her schemes had been exposed. But me? I felt lighter. Not because of the wealth I had revealed, but because I have finally reminded everyone that silence does not mean weakness, and humility is not poverty. And so I will leave you, my dear listeners, with this lesson. Never measure a person's worth by what they show you on the outside. Some of the richest souls live in the humblest houses, and some of the poorest hearts hide behind mansions. That night at the family dinner, Vanessa called me a pauper, but she learned the hard way that true wealth is not money. It is respect. Dear friends, thank you so much for watching and listening to this story. If you were in my place, would you have revealed your wealth to silence Vanessa, or would you have kept it hidden forever? I want to hear your thoughts, so share them in the comments below. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what keeps these powerful stories alive. Until next time, remember, dignity is the crown that no one can take away from you.